Okay, so number 20, what is the equation in standard form of a line that passes through the point 6, -10 and has a slope of 1/6? Okay, one thing I like to do is look at my answer choices, and what I notice is that they all start with x minus 6y. So really the only thing is different is what they are equal to. Okay, so on this problem, I see that it gives me a point. Well, I know a point is an x comma a y value. And they all start with x minus 6y equals, so is it equal to 66, -66, 11, or -11? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace x with the x for my point. So I'm going to take this x out and replace it with 6. Minus 6. I'm going to take out this y and replace it with the y from the point, which is -10. All right, and from here I can just go calculate. So you can calculate it by hand, or if you want to, just go to your calculator. And I'm going to just type it in. 6 minus 6 times -10. Boom, it gives me a 66, positive. So that one matches answer choice A. Okay, on 21 it says, which of the following describes the line containing the points -1, 2, and 2, 8? Okay, so if I look at my answer choices, I see that 2 are in slope-intercept form, and then 2 are in standard form. I know a lot of people from here would like to take these 2 points and find slope, so that's an idea. Okay, so I always start slope from 2 points with the fraction bar with the minus sign on top and bottom. And I say y's rise. So I go to my point and I figure out which one of these is my y. Well, the y is the second number, so my y is 2, so it rises to the top. Its x value has to drop directly below it. All right, so moving on over here, I go to my next point, y rises. Well, I know the y value is the 8, so it rises to the top. Its x value of a 2 goes to the bottom. All right, so let's go ahead and calculate that. It's a fraction, so I'm going to do control divide. On the top, I'm going to do 2 minus 8. On the bottom, I have a -1 minus 2. So that tells me my slope is a positive 2. I'm going to go ahead and put a little m over that. M is slope. Okay, so let's go ahead. That really doesn't help me here when I'm looking at standard form, but it does help me here because I know slope is the coefficient to your x, the number in front of your x. Well, I know slope has to be a positive 2. That's not a positive 2. That's not a positive 2. So by doing that, I was able to make an elimination. Okay, what I like to do from here is anytime I have an equation, when in doubt, graph it out. And the reason graph would be helpful here is once I graph this equation, I can use trace to jump to my x values and see if they match. All right, so let's go ahead and graph answer choice A. So I'll have to delete the equal sign, change it to relation, so I can graph 2x plus y is equal to 4. All right, so now that it's graphed, I'm going to use Mini51 trace. Notice it looks like an x, so I can jump to any x value. Well, my first point says -1, 2. Well, the x value is a -1, so I'm going to type in -1, click enter. Okay, does this point match the point it gave me in the problem, -1, 2? That's a 6, so no, it does not. So I know answer choice A will not work. So we're left with B, but guys, I want to actually go through the motions so you can see why it is the answer. All right, so now I'm going to graph answer choice B. I'm going to delete my equal sign, change it to relation, so I can graph 2x minus y is equal to -4. Oops, typed something in wrong. All right, so I'm going to use Mini51 trace. The first x value from the point it gave me is -1, so I'm going to type in -1 and click enter. -1, 2. Perfect. This point matches. Never settle for 1. Always check both. So on my next point, 2, 8, the x value is 2, so I'm going to jump to where x is 2. Notice this one matches as well. So B is our answer. Okay, on this one is an easy problem as long as you can remember what 0 means. Another word for 0 is the x-intercept. So we only want to be looking at this x-axis and figuring out what point does it cross the x. Well, I see that it crosses the x right here. So let's count from the origin. That's at 1, 2, 3, positive 3. So my x-intercept is a positive 3. If you want to bubble the positive, you can. It's not necessary. Remember, a negative will always be necessary. On 23, anytime we have an equation given to us, and our answer choices are pictures of graphs, graph it out. All right, so I'm going to go graph 5x minus 3y equals negative 15. Since it's not a y equals equation, I am going to have to change it to relation. So I could type in 5x minus 3y equals negative 15. All right, so now all we have to do is look at our calculator. This is what it looks like. And then pick the graph on our paper which matches it. So I'm going to compare this to my answer choices. And it looks like option B. (24) The graph below shows the amount of air in a scuba tank with respect to time in minutes. What is the rate of change of the amount of air with respect to the number of minutes? All right, so we know that rate of change is slope. It's the letter M. All right, so whenever we have a graph, to find rate of change, we do rise over run. Also notice that this line is going down, so I know my slope has to be a negative. All my answer choices are negative, so that doesn't really help me. And we needed to pick 2 good points, so I'm going to pick this y-intercept point, and this x-intercept point. Turn it into a triangle. Let's use yellow. Okay, rise over run. So let's see how much it's rising right here. So it starts at 0 and it's ending at 40. So I know it's rising 40. And it's running right here. So it starts at 0 and it ends at 6. So from 0 to 6, that's running 6. So now what I have to do is I have to simplify negative 40 over 6. So it's a fraction. So negative, control divide, 40 over 6. I'm going to go ahead and put a decimal after that 6 so my answer comes out in decimal form. So negative 6.6 repeating. Matches answer C. Okay, 25. Which equation passes through the point 5, 7 and is perpendicular to y equals 8 minus 5 over 6x? Okay, so perpendicular. I know we want to find the opposite reciprocal slope. Both things must happen. Okay, so let's first find the slope of the original line given to me. So I find my x and I look in front of it. Excuse my writing, I forgot. Don't know where my pen's at. Okay, opposite means change the sign. So right here, I know my slope is a negative. So opposite means change the sign to a positive. Reciprocal means flip it. Nice, it's already in a fraction, so instead of saying 5 over 6, I'm going to flip it to be 6 over 5. So I know I want my slope to be a positive 6 over 5 in order to be perpendicular to this line. So go look at your answer choices. Okay, I'm going to eliminate. I know this one has the wrong slope. This one has the wrong slope. So it's either C or D. So now I have to figure out which one of these guys goes to the point 5,7. So I'm going to do this similar how we did earlier. I'm going to graph an answer choice, and I'm going to use trace to jump to my X value. So let's go ahead and graph answer choice C. Okay, remember this means y equals, so there's no need for me to change it to relation. There's no need for me to type y equals. So I'm going to type in 6 over 5 x. And I'm going to use trace, menu 5, 1. And I need to jump to the x from my point. So the point was 5, 7. So my x is the 5. So type in 5 and click enter. 5, 6. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for 5, 7. All right, so by default, we know the answer is D now, but let's go ahead and type it in just for practice. So this already means y equals, so I'm going to type in 1 plus 6 over 5 x. Menu 5, 1, jump to the x, so the x for my point is 5. 5, 7, there it is. That's what I was looking for, so I know the answer is D. Okay, on 26 it says, what is the slope of a line that is parallel? So if you forget what parallel means, remember, look in parallel. Those two L's are parallel to the y-axis. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a picture of what the y-axis looks like. So if this is what the y-axis looks like, I'm going to draw a line that's parallel to that guy. So I know the y-axis and the line that's parallel to it are both vertical lines. So that little bitty word that we use to help us remember about vertical lines is vux. So let's go ahead and write down vux. And the reason that vux is helpful is because it reminds us that vertical lines have, this stands for my slope, so U is what type of slope? Undefined. So vux tells me that vertical lines have an undefined slope and their equations are x equals. So the main part I was looking at, or needing out of vux, was this guy right here. So since these are both vertical lines, I know both of these have an undefined slope. Okay, if the linear parent function f of x equals x undergoes the following transformation, we want to have a vertical stretch of 5, we want it to shift left 2 and up 3. Which of the following equations would describe the changes? Okay, so what I like to look at is the last number in each equation. And the reason I like to do that is because y equals mx plus b. So the guy at the very end by itself reminds me of b, which is our y-intercept, okay? So I'm not saying it is the y-intercept, I'm saying it just reminds me of the b, the y-intercept. So that helps me remember that if it's happening at the very end, it's happening along the y-axis. So I know it's either going to be moving it up or down. So if it's happening at the very end, it's either moving it up or down. So keep in mind, we want it to go up 3. So if I want it to go up 3, I know I can eliminate A and C. This would go up 2, this would go up 2. Okay, so we're left between B and D. The only difference between B and D is that right here it says x minus 2 and this one says x plus 2. Okay, so remember, if it's happening to the x, think about how the x-axis looks. So if I know if it's in the parentheses with the x, it's either moving it left or right. Well, I want it to go left too, but remember, x's are tricky. Think about your lying, cheating ex, okay, your ex-boyfriend, your ex-girlfriend, lying and cheating, all right? So it's going to do the opposite of what makes sense. So to the left is backwards. So naturally, if I think backwards, I'm going to think minus, naturally. So backwards, minus, that makes sense. But since x is a liar, I know it's actually the opposite. So to go backwards, instead of minus, it has to be a plus. So I know my answer has to be D. So be careful with the x's. X's are liars and cheaters. It's the opposite of what logically makes sense. Linear function f of x equals x is graphed on a coordinate plane. The graph of a new line is formed by changing the slope of the original line to 1/4 and the y-intercept to -4. Which statement about the relationship between these two graphs is true? All right. I don't know. I like the y-intercept. To me, it's easier one to focus on. So I know the y-axis goes up and down. So if my y-intercept is a -4, do you think that will move it up 4 or down 4? Okay, remember, x's are the liar cheaters, not y. So if it's a -4, I know it's going to go down 4. So if I look at my answer choices, I can eliminate B and C. So we're left between A and D. The difference between A and D is A is saying it's steeper, D is saying it's less steep. So we have to pay attention to our slope. So remember, think of steepness like a mountain, right? The slope of a mountain. All right, we always compare our slope to 1. So is 1/4 bigger than 1 or smaller than 1? So it's less than 1, which means your slope is getting small. So a small slope on a mountain. Just think about skiing. If you're on a small slope, are you going fast or slow? Well, if you're on the small slope, you're on the bunny slopes where the beginners are. So it's not very steep. It's less steep. So someone once said to me, less slope, less steep. And I liked it. Makes sense. So less slope, less steep. Okay, 29. Which of the following could be the correlation coefficient for the scatter plot shown below? Well, first of all, if I look at those points, I can see a trend of the points going up. So because the trend is going up, I know I can eliminate A and C. So now I'm left between B and D. Okay, well, D says R is 1. Remember, having a correlation coefficient of 1 or -1 is perfect. So if R was 1, that tells me my points would have to fall exactly on one straight line. Do all of these points fall exactly on one straight line? No. This is not a perfect correlation, so it can't be 1. All right, 30. Determine if there is a correlation between the number of days absent to your algebra class in your algebra grade. If there is a correlation, is this a causal relationship? So does one cause the other one, or just an association? Do they just share a relationship? Okay, well, let's think about how this happens. So let's say that the number of days absent. Let's think about it. Let's say the number of days you're absent goes up. So you're absent a lot. What's going to happen to your grade in the class? Well, if you're absent all the time, your grade's going to go down. So if one goes up while the other one goes down, is that going to be a negative or a positive? That's a negative, so I know it can't be positive. Now we have to decide between A and D. So A tells me there's a negative correlation, but A is telling me there's a causal relationship, saying one of those causes the other one to happen. And D is saying there's no correlation at all. There's absolutely no relationship whatsoever. Okay, well, does being absent cause your grade to go down? Well, if you miss a test because you're absent, will your grade go down? Yes, it will. So one of those does cause the other one. And there's definitely a correlation. Alrighty. Later, guys.